Okay, so we'll just start getting ready here. This next session, this panel's everything you need to know about finding the right service plan for your EV chargers. Fairly self-explanatory. I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Well, appreciate everybody being here. My name is Mike Hall. I'm with Miller Electric Company, headquartered out of Jacksonville, Florida. Get to take this time to introduce the panel and their company. So I'll start with you, Ryan.
Yeah, appreciate that, Mike. I'm Ryan Soderman with FTI, Faith Technology Solutions. I'm the Vice President of Operations for our solutions team. That's our nationwide service group. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. John?
Hey everybody, John Stallbush. I'm the Vice President of Sales for ABB Mobility. We are in charge of public and fleet charging, so I'll be bringing that perspective today when we're talking about service plans.
Hey everyone, Joseph Barletta with Smart Charge America. We are a full service EV charging installation company. We only focus on all things EV charging, so you come to us, you want other electrical work done, I'm gonna refer you to other electrical contractors, but this is all that we do. So I'm hoping to give you guys a little bit of perspective of what someone who literally singly focuses in on the industry has experienced over the last few years. So whatever value I can add, I hope to do so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know, Ryan, with your company, you cover all things electrical services, same with ours. So I think it's very interesting to hear that. So I'll start with the first question for you. What are the best practices for ensuring maximum uptime for EV charging stations, including methods for monitoring and addressing issues promptly?
So most of the time when it comes to like EV charging and proactive maintenance, you want to have a preventative maintenance schedule there in place, but it depends on like your portfolio size. If your portfolio size is 100 units or 1,000 locations, you want to increase your preventative maintenance according to the size of your portfolio. And when I'm talking about increase your preventative maintenance, I'm talking about increasing the frequency at which you're practicing the preventative maintenance and going through those actions. And so typically with like utility companies, we hold several utility contracts for preventative maintenance and servicing. And typically we're seeing about like any time a utility company has like 1,000 units or more, they want quarterly frequency on their preventative maintenance. Before like 500, they're wanting semi-annually, and if they only have about 100 or so, they're just kind of playing in the market, they just want annual preventative maintenance. And I'm like, you're missing the point of preventative maintenance. The whole point of preventative maintenance is to get out there, proactively look at these stations, and then at some point, if something's wrong, we can fix and repair the station right then and there. But if we can't, well, guess what? We're gonna have another round here in the next month or two, and we'll just, by that time, lead times on repair parts, we'll know exactly, and then once my guys are rolling again for the next preventative maintenance, we'll just do the servicing right then and there. But the most important thing for us, me, Ryan, from a servicer perspective, we don't really care about uptime. Uptime is something that the charging operators care about. For, electricians and electrical contractors and repair specialists, we care about downtime. When that station goes down, how long is that station down? And by having the manufacturers, and I'll tell you this, you need, whenever you're having your manufacturer, get in touch with your manufacturer, make sure you have your troubleshooting guide and also your field replacement units parts list. If you don't have that from your manufacturer, it's just gonna exacerbate that much more time for you to get the units up and running whenever you do have a unit that is down. So getting your repair parts manual in-house, and then also maybe figuring out with the manufacturer, like ABB, they know their units. They know what unit, like what components inside their stations are gonna fail more often. So, okay guys, let's have a couple of those units on hand, ready to be deployed. I'll have them in my trucks when I'm doing the preventative maintenance. If we're seeing it, and that's the problem, we just do it and no one feels the pain. It's like, so that's some of the things that we could do to help mitigate and push down the downtime, or the uptime in this case, for the charger providers.
So preventive maintenance piece, you're going out on site, opening the chargers up, inspecting, you have a checklist of items that you're covering. Ryan, is there anything that y'all are doing outside of the actual sending technicians out, because that does come at a cost when you're going through and doing that? Is there anything that you're looking at on that side?
Yeah, and I appreciate all your context there, because it's so truthful. We're worrying about that downtime for the customer and making sure that their fleet is reliable. I mean, it's their livelihood, right? And it's their profit center. One thing I would also say to the preventative maintenance piece is climate conditions in which the chargers live and exist, right? If you're in dirty, dusty climate in the West, then obviously filters become a bigger issue. So you got to think about the climate and the environmental impacts as well on your preventative maintenance schedules. And it plays right into the warranty of your chargers and your manufacturers. ABB is going to tell you exactly, hey, this is when we need to have this done, and it's part of the warranty and the procedure to the charger. So to that may not be enough. And just like you were saying, usage on the fleet requires us to do farther maintenance schedules and procedures to that. And to your point there, Mike, yes, predictive analytics. We do a lot of that behind the scenes with our network operations center. We're tapping into the chargers, the DC fast chargers, the level 3s. We're taking the analytics that the charger's putting out in the codes, mapping those and understanding what's coming and seeing around the corner to help us drive solutions for the customers to keep that uptime in place. So really, it's a unique world right now and trying to navigate uptime with chargers, but we're making progress and things are getting better. You know, we set up here, 2 years ago, it was 38% of all chargers in the United States didn't work.
It was rough. It was rough,
right? We're down to 1 in 5. Harvard School of Business just as a study, and 24 here, 1 in 5. We're getting better. But it's gonna take us maintaining chargers and being aware of the situation we're in with them.
So, I guess from your side, what percentage, we know the numbers that are constantly put out there, but what percentage of issues are y'all able to go through that kind of remote diagnostics and resolve remotely without having to send out technicians?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, what we're seeing with our network operations center is we're seeing about a 98% uptime, and we're discovering and being able to resolve about 98% of all faults internally without a truck roll. That's big, right? That's a value save for the customer, the time to get there, and with us being nationwide, it's important, you know, because we don't have a truck just right around every corner from every customer, right? So we want to make sure that we're connected to the customer, driving a value there, and we're seeing a 98% uptime, to your point, Mike.
Awesome.
Thank you.
John, got a question for you from the manufacturer standpoint.
That's about time.
Yeah.
I've been waiting up here.
Hey, we know you got a lot to say.
I got a lot to say.
So, from Joseph's point, going through and having that list of spare parts that could be needed, that manual, you know, what are you doing from the manufacturer's standpoint so that when the charger is down, we're not waiting 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get a charger back up and running?
I mean, the most important thing is that whether it's Smart Charge or it's Faith Technologies, is that the training's there. So they have to be enabled through the asset management platform that we have in the back end, and they have to have that appropriate training so they can appropriately diagnose these chargers and very quickly resolve the issue. The thing that we're trying to stop is multiple truck rolls. So us informing who our partner is, 2 good examples, what the issue is with a high degree of accuracy, how to resolve that issue is the most important part. And it really, that ends up impacting, I think, a big topic, which ends up being what the unit economics of the charger become, and how does service impact that?
No, I definitely appreciate that. So this is going to be for all 3 of you. When a client, a customer is going out and purchasing chargers, they come with a warranty from the manufacturer. Warranty typically is covering parts, not labor. How are you going through and building out that SLA with that end user? What KPIs are you tying to that? How do you go through that model with them and determining what's going to be most effective, because it needs to be up, whether it's collecting revenue or it's mission critical to their operation running? You know, there's the 2 different sides to that. How do you help in diagnosing what they need from that SLA and then helping walk through kind of the financial side of that for them?
I mean, the wording in manufacturing is they'll cover labor and warranty, but the labor that they'll cover is just the labor that they experience from taking care of you in their own house and sending you the replacement part and all that stuff. But you, as a service provider or charging provider, you have to pay for that truck roll. You have to pay for that electrician to actually go. They're not going to pay for that. So you have to, one of the things that we've done is when we're installing the units, we have to put the service plan into play then and there. We can't, like, see if your chargers are in the ground for 5 years and then give you a service plan on that. Like, we have to be able to inspect and make sure that the entire process is there in order for us to give you a service plan. And that service plan, what we do is we tailor it to the manufacturer's service. So if ABB's got a 5-year parts and labor warranty on their side for their replacement parts, that's great. But we're gonna line our service plan according to their stuff, so that way both of them expire at the same time, and then you ultimately will make the decision whether or not you want to upgrade your unit, if you want more units, or if you want to, I don't know if you guys have an extended warranty packages, but maybe there are things like that manufacturers can exercise. But I would say in the we kind of bundle our servicing plans with the volume that's there. So if you're coming in and you're buying 10 charging stations at a site, well, we're going to give you, a huge discount on the servicing plan, because, especially if we're doing the installation, because for us, it just makes sense. We're trying to help the end user at the end of the day. And we know that if we do a really good job, and FTEI, does a really good job, that we're not going to get the calls out. We know that 78% of all charging disruptions happen because of network connectivity. We know that the other ones are vandalism, user error, power electronics. It's very seldom that it's the electrical or it's the hardware. It's generally everything else. And so if we can minimize that with our servicing plan, then ultimately that helps the end user have a higher uptime and helps the manufacturer really, kind of the ace in the hole. Like, we are a dependable, reliable manufacturer. Go with us. Because I'll tell you, when the charging station's down, everyone gets a black eye. But most importantly, the customer gets a black eye.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I really appreciate that view too. And I think a lot of that too comes back to when you were talking about the SLA. We try to look at it, and you get into this state where you boil the ocean and you're trying to do too much. And we like to have a conversation with the customer, sit down and say, hey, we know what's important to you, but here's what we know from our expertise in the industry. And we do curtail our SLAs around the whole product, right? There's more than just the charger itself, right? So there's the infrastructure and the backbone to that charging as well. So we'll look at your gear and your metering and your power distribution. Do you own your power grid? Do you own your own transformers, right? What is the state of the infrastructure that supplies those chargers, right? And wrapping that all up into that, because that's a critical piece to that as well as the network connections, right? And so I think that that's a miss that we have in the industry today, and there's a lot of value in that for customers on the back end as well.
Awesome. John, question for you. So I know we talked about this in our prep for the panel. I'm going to ask you to keep it as concise as possible. I know you're passionate.
This is the last session of the day. You guys have stolen all the time.
So
The next 10 minutes.
So when we talk about building out service models and plans, obviously there's dollar figures that go to it, and it may not be thought of in the initial planning and infrastructure of a project to build out a service maintenance plan. So what are the key differences between energy-based payment models, which I'm going to ask you to dive into, and a fixed contract plan for charger service, and which scenarios are those best applied to?
Energy-based payments it's an innovative commercial model that aligns the interests of the charge point operator with that of the OEM and the folks who are providing the maintenance. So in this case, let's take a public entity and they've contracted directly with ABB Mobility. We might end up using a Smart Charge America or a Fave Technologies to help supply a lot of that, the services required to be able to hit the guarantees that come with a model like this. The idea being that instead of being in a fixed focus less on total cost of ownership and a little bit more on total cost of operations. And is it profitable if you're a public entity? When we focus there, we can sort of distill it down into which chunk of that 40 or 50 cents per kilowatt hour that the consumer was paying was related to services. Which part of that do we need to take to cover our bottom line? And then what guarantees come with that? So if you want to guarantee more and you de-risk that charge point operator further, naturally you want to take a little bit more because the unit economics make more sense. De-risking it means guaranteeing things like plug-in success rate, charging success rates, transaction success rates. plug-in, you know, I already said that one, but there's a number of these different rates that we're monitoring. We're saying that it goes beyond uptime. Uptime might just mean that it's connected to the network. But whenever that consumer pulled up, did they get a reliable charge the first time? We think that this is the most important thing that will help promote wider EV adoption. If we do that, the utilization goes up, and the profitability of the CPO in this case will also go up. So it's very much focused in the public space. I think over time it'll make its way to fleet. On the fleet side, you can use a fixed model. It's just really important that you do the correct preventative maintenances so that you're not doing corrective. You don't want to move from preventative to corrective, and that's the key.
No, I appreciate that. You go to that fleet model, you know, think about a last mile fleet where the majority of the chargers are level 2 chargers. And you talk about preventative maintenance. What preventative maintenance is going to be recommended on a level 2 charger at a level of frequency versus preventative maintenance, you know, going in, dusting out the power modules, actually checking voltages and things like that. You know, when we look at preventative maintenance, especially to the fleet side, what are we doing to actually go in and look at that level 2 charger, and how frequently are we doing that?
I'm sure that both these gentlemen have some opinions on it, but I'll tell you that it very much depends on the cost of your operations if it goes down. So instead of measuring the value of it by, you know, what is the uptime or how reliable is that level 2 charger, or frankly in this scenario it doesn't really matter if it was level 3, it's what's the cost to your business if that thing isn't working, if those trucks are unable to perform. So that's really where you start to figure out what the value is. Frankly, on the level 2 side, it costs us more to roll a truck than it does to try to service these things. It's very much a rip and replace model. I think that the level 2 space has very quickly found its way into a commodity space, where on the level 3 side you're going to see a different sort of value stream.
Yeah, and then with that to the fleet side and that kind of fixed payment versus the energy-based payment, you know, when you look at that rip and replace, you know, what are you doing from a stocking and storing? And Ryan, I'll push that to you. What do y'all do for your customers on that? How do you ensure that you're not having to go back to a manufacturer and say, I need a charger and it takes 2 weeks, and now they're out of a charger for 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's a good question. And kind of to your point with the level 3 chargers, you know, we have some clients out there and some fleets. It's no secret, you know, it's 6 figures if a truck doesn't roll. And so it's a must-do, can't-fail effort every day with us and those servicing those fleets. So it becomes a sense of urgency. It's serious, right? And that's how we have to react with the charging fleets. To your point, we have to build in the model around our MSAs and our SLAs, that product lifecycle cost, right? And understanding that through our predictive analytics and understanding prescribed maintenance to the chargers, and then building that into our ROM pricing model is how do we replace this charger quickly, right? Knowing that we have 24 hours or less to respond to a charger full. In some situations, it's 4 hours, right? So knowing that customer, kind of like we talked about, having those conversations with them and saying, hey, here's the state of your chargers and your infrastructure. Here's what we recommend, and allowing them to have that freedom to make those decisions that impact their business, because nobody knows the business better than the person that owns it, right? We're there to guide them and help them through those challenging times. So,
I appreciate that. Looking at a service plan, right? You take service, you divide it into 3 tiers. You know, you got a tier 1, that direct driver support. Tier 2, kind of what are you doing to help monitor on that remote kind of side of it. Tier 3, actually rolling a truck. What are you doing to help build in service plans for your customers on those first 2, to where, you know, being in the electrical contracting space, being in that service repair space, that tier 1 support, that can take a lot of time, especially on the commercial side. You know, you might have a driver who rented a car from the airport who's never driven an EV, plugs in and says, I don't know. You know, so how are you looking at kind of that tier 1 through tier 3 and providing that level of support?
I mean, for the most part, like the majority of the time that we're getting calls in, it's generally user error, and my service and support staff, they can take care of it, right? They walk the customer through, like, no, you're supposed to do this and this and that. So that helps us prevent a truck roll. Then, of course, the second tier, I would guess, if something is wrong, well, sometimes we're able to remotely like reset the unit from there to figure it out. And basically, it's kind of like your cell phones. Cell phone, you know, is giving you problems. What do? You just turn it off and restart it, right? maybe I can use a computer, for instance. Maybe it happens more to us on our computers and our cell phones these days, but it's the same thing with the chargers, right? But then I guess the third role would be actually getting a truck roll out there. And so to minimize, I guess it would depend on like how like Wild West is your fleet. Like, do you have 100 chargers and they're all different makes and models and manufacturers, or are you the type that you just went with one particular model and you're standardizing your approach on there, and that just makes it a lot easier for us to be able to diagnose a number of charging stations faster. But if it's a Wild West and you have 10 different models and 10 different manufacturers and 10 different software systems and all that stuff, it's going to make it a lot more complicated and a lot harder and a lot longer for us to be able to get in there and properly diagnose to be able to repair your unit to get it up and running. So I hope that helps answer the question, but maybe not.
No, you're good. I just know that it's one of those, especially when you have a client that comes to you and wants you to take over the service of all their chargers. How do you build again that tier 1, tier 2? Do you have anything to add to that, Ryan?
Yeah, and I think for us, it's maybe a little different on the commercial side and the industrial clientele. We have great relationships with the likes of ABB, and working with them to understand their product and the strategies that we have around their faults and code. The support to us is going to be remote at first, and working through the API connections with the CMS software sitting over the top of it, and understanding that fleet can be controlled remotely, and understanding the problems before they happen, kind of with that predictive analytics that we talk about. And then if we can't do anything remotely, then we're looking to do that truck roll, right? That's to us the next line, so we kind of reverse 2 and 1 there in a lot of ways. And the relationship piece of that on the front end comes back to the manufacturer of the product, and that's why we have these great relationships with like John and ABB, and being able to have these conversations up front to build the best product offering for our customers.
Choose your manufacturer very carefully, because I'll tell you, when you're doing the truck roll and you have your electrician out there on site, they're charging you by the minute, like literally. And so if your OEM actually has a really good system of tech support and prowess, and they're available all the time, like that is huge. They have triple redundancies in place for those technicians that are out in the field when they're on site. My guys, on some manufacturers, they're literally on the phone on wait for like an hour and 15 minutes. Literally just on hold before they're actually able to get in touch with somebody to actually get the information that they need to properly diagnose while they're on site, right? Because there's only so much we can do digitally, but when we're on site, we need to be very effective and very efficient while we're on site. And sometimes, depending on the manufacturer, you don't get that. Established OEMs like ABB, you get that and way more, but I'll let him talk.
Your service level agreement is only as good as the OEM's backing of it.
Yeah, so John, what do y'all do on the customer service side? I say customer service, that partner service side, that communication piece. Obviously, Ryan, Joseph rolls a truck out. You've got some level of monitoring back to it to where but how does your customer service team handle that communication?
That's when it gets to a bit of a, so there's what we would call tier 2 is whenever we're working with one of their agents that's on the ground virtually. That fails, and we move to the highest level, tier 3, where ABB field service engineer, that's a W2 ABB branded engineer, is going to go out on site and ensure that the issue is resolved. So we have everything from partners all the way to the in-house stuff, and then we provide dashboards so that our partners that are enabled through our training programs have the ability to do some level of diagnosis themselves, and ideally are able to, again, have that one truck roll and get those chargers back online.
Awesome.
And I think to add to that real quick, it goes back to that training with our partners and our OEMs, because not all training is created equally when it comes to OEMs. So you're being modest there, but your guys' training program is there as well.
All right. We'll open it up to questions at this time. If anybody has any questions.
It doesn't even have to be service related.
Yeah.
Kidding. Alaska, right? Anchorage. I knew it. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with the electric utility in Alaska, and there's not a whole lot of chargers up there, and it's a pretty remote market for service. So I was just curious, how are you guys approaching like hardware versus software issues. And I think you have a good example actually right behind you on that charger where it has a NIAX credit card reader that's not connected for whatever reasons. We're in a demo environment. But we have a ABB charger that had similar issues with communication just due to software or firmware incompatibilities or instability. And ABB sent tech to Alaska to like replace it and spent money on that. And it didn't solve the problem. It took weeks to diagnose, externally or remotely. And finally, once the appropriate software was actually loaded onto the charger, firmware was upgraded, everything worked seamlessly. But a lot of it seems like the legacy hardware providers are really good at supporting their hardware, but troubleshooting some of those smaller software communication issues seems to be the Achilles heel for not just ABB, like every major manufacturer has problems with credit card readers and payment terminals and stuff like that. So how do you address those?
It's a good question. Credit card reader, I think we need to be pointed here with this and realize that we are very much talking about credit card readers. So it's like not just the example, that actually is the industry example. Is specifically, it might be, regardless of the brand that's inside of that charger, consider that to be a bit of an alien device that's sitting inside of a box that somebody else manufactured, and there's a complete reliance, codependence between the firmware of that credit card reader and the software on the charger itself. And the communication between the two teams that are constantly and iteratively developing software and firmwares that are supposed to match up with each other is the part that whenever you have something that's down for a couple of weeks, that's the failure point. The failure point was back in the development side, all the way down to the coding. So what we've done as an organization is we've understood that's one of the major friction points, if not the highest one. So we acquired a company a couple of years ago where we've actually been able to take payments in-house. We've decided that we can no longer have things that are a part of our charger that we're unable to guarantee to the type of telecom level asset management that we know that this industry needs, especially in the public charging market. You think about examples of charging out there where you've seen good examples. We could just say that there's one, Tesla did a good job a couple years ago, I thought, whenever they brought everything in-house, they built it all up. That's what ABB Mobility is doing. So what we've done is we've said, we're gonna take all the friction out. We're gonna create a very seamless experience. We're gonna take anything, whether you're pulling up, you're using an app, you're using the credit card reader, or you're using the display on the charger itself, we're gonna make sure that it is as seamless as anything else. It's an Android-based platform, and we're able to load up the exact same software on it. So whether it's what you're looking at on the screen or the credit card reader, it's actually not only is going to be connected, but actually can show the same display as well. So we've really tried to move up the stack to solve that problem. I think you'll see that out in this space.
We got one up here.
I had a kind of a follow-up there. What's it like retrofitting that in the field?
Retrofitting a credit card reader?
Nightmare. Just think like it's another bottleneck that gets in the way of the user experience, and so now you're dealing with another. The problem with they're trying to go fully integrated, and that's what the industry needs. When you're segmented to where you're completely fractioned, you're only as good as like the next part for you to get to a successful charging session, right? And so the more parts that you have in between the user and the successful charging session, you're just asking for a nightmare. And so the payment system, when you throw a credit card in, that's just another thing. You just insert it into that process that when something goes down, I'm gonna tell you this is a secret. Ryan knows, when something goes down, anything on a charger, no one wants to take blame for it, and everyone's pointing everyone else that it's their problem, not yours. And meanwhile, the customer is the one who's trying to figure out who is telling me the truth and who do I need to hold held accountable to get this thing repaired. And so the more of that we can get out of the way, the more smooth that frictionless, customer experience will be. And that's ultimately the goal. So, go ahead.
So we're EV charger installers, and I really liked what you guys were saying about the preventative maintenance aspects of things, especially in regards to, make sure you get the repair parts manual from the manufacturer. What other tips and tricks have you learned over, your experience that could help get these stations fixed quicker and decrease the downtime?
When you're trying to do a preventative maintenance plan, there's two parts of a preventative maintenance. There's a standard servicing where you just dispatched out reactive more approach, and there's a certain charge for that truck roll. But if you were able to roll maybe a preventative maintenance schedule in there, then you can go down on the amount of the fee that you can charge the customer for that service call. So by bundling it with different things and different benefits for the customer, you could entice that customer to be like, you know what, this is the absolute best thing for me. Like maybe, look, I'll give you 30 man hours of free tech support, and we're in your corner like a boxing ring. We're in your corner. If something goes wrong, we'll be out there. We'll hold whatever that component went wrong, we'll hold them accountable. We'll tell them, no, it's not this, it's not this. It's like a doctor. You gotta figure out what it's not before you actually identify what it is, right? And so no one's gonna help the customer for that, only us. Like we are the only ones that are in the customer's corner trying to get the unit up and running, right? And so that is one of the things you can do, is successfully bundle other things that your electrical contracting firm has to be able to entice the customer to be able to do that. Energy, based metering, that's really tough for electrical contractors. OEMs can do that, but that's really tough for us because we want to make that money up front and hedge our bets with regards to whether or not the charger will go down or not. And that's where actuaries and all that stuff comes in. On the energy-based stuff, you may be able to put together a program where, hey, look, give me 60% of your, or 40% of your revenue on every dollar that you generate from this company, and I'll give you my service plan totally free. And it comes with 2, rolls of preventative maintenance per year. But you get a little bit of revenue off of that, which is what they're doing. But at the same time, you're I guess in accounting, I don't know what you would call it, but you're not collecting that money up front. You're collecting it over time, which, depending on your cash flow, may be better for you from an investor standpoint, the valuation, or it may not for cash flow reasons. So hope that helps.
And then to add a little depth to that, I think another perspective to look at is you go buy an ABB charger from John, that is in a controlled environment, and that is a commissioned product at his factory. And when he ships it to you, where do elements come into play? At installation, right? And so not all installations are created equal. And so what are you doing for pre-site turnover, commissioning documents? What checklists are in place to make sure lugs are torqued, make sure conductors are the right size, make sure you're using pin and ferrule connectors, or using the right side crimping tool to crimp connectors. These are all things as electricians we see in the field all the time. Bolts get left untorqued. You go to your truck and you don't have a number 6 ferrule, and so you shove it in a number 8, right? And you crimp it down and you say, it'll be all right. Well, no, you created a hot spot, right? So the ounce of prevention is the pound of cure. So how are you holding everybody that's doing these installs accountable to the install for the OEM? And so I would really challenge you to start that checklist, that commissioning on-site inspection before you take ownership of that as a service provider. It's so important. It's a controlled product. When it becomes uncontrolled is when it hits the ground. And that's where you have to create that level of control with the product and the interaction with you and your team.
I want to just add that I think one of the most important things an operator is going to do is choose an OEM that has actually been able to bring the components in-house so that that reliability is there. You have to choose somebody who's built chargers that are easier to service. For instance, there's decisions between liquid-cooled and air-cooled cables, right? Which one of those are you going to choose? There's companies like us who have brought the power modules in-house. The boards are in-house. We've designed everything, and I think that really helps in terms of reliability and servicing.
Sure, but people don't pick cars based on what's going to happen later. It looks cool and we buy it. Sorry, that was just a side note. A little question about OEM-specific training. So, like, ChargePoint has their own training system for y'all, and so there's EVITP, there's I think Tesla has their own. I think all these OEMs. To what extent do you feel like that's necessary to get this work done? I mean, you talked about, you and I were talking about before, but you also mentioned here the need for the specifics for that charger on site, at least the parts list, that sort of thing.
The difficulty on that is, like, especially with so many different OEMs and so many different training criteria and all of that stuff, the difficulty that Ryan and I were talking about earlier is the opportunity cost. Like, who's going to take that training at your facility, and how many people are going to take that for training? And just know that sometimes it's the opportunity. Like, I have to pay my guy to take that training, and he could be out in the field making $1,500 an hour, but I have to sit him down and take that training. So it's important that we get the criteria and the training there, but it's also a huge burden on the OEM to keep that training certification up, to keep it constantly continuing. As the industry changes, they need to change their training criteria. And that's the main thing we're seeing is some of the legacy OEMs, they don't really care about updating their training criteria. They leave the same one in place for the next 5 years or 10 years, and that's a big mistake. The more proactive the OEM is in their training of the certifications and of their installers, the better that experience is going to be. I don't know.
I'll say this: you cannot service an ABB e-mobility charger without training. If you tried to service it, it would be the equivalent of just throwing something against the wall. You don't know how to fix it because these chargers are not power electronics. They're not so simple that you can just walk up as a trained electrician and know exactly what has caused the fault. It's a complex machine with a lot of parts that are working together, and it's the integration and the interoperability more times than not that's causing that issue than an actual hardware issue. So the training is crucial, otherwise everybody's time and money gets wasted.
And then the electrical part of that too, to answer your question, is what's a qualified person? NFPA 70 in the NEC is a definition of qualified. And that's what our standard is as an electrical contractor, to be held to that in the National Electric Code. And so it's our obligation as a reputable electrical contractor and service provider to make sure our team members are qualified per the parameters of what we have to provide to our customers. And if that means we have to invest in training, then we should do that. And if we're a partner and a true OEM partner, then we take that training and we support them because we're an extension of their brand, right? To your point, is all training equal? Probably not. But that goes back to your OEMs that you partner with and who you grow with, because you're also dictating the criteria that you're teaching in the classes, because they're taking that feedback. It goes both ways. Here's things we're seeing. Here's environmental conditions we're seeing. And that helps them build a training program that helps the next generation of EV service technicians. We have to pay it forward. There is a shortage of technicians in this world, and especially in the EV service realm. And if we don't pay it forward, we're going to be so far behind in 5 years, it's not even going to be funny. This training is so important to the future of this program.
You made a good point there that we do need that. No doubt we need that training. There is EVITP, which is this more generalized training. There are also, just walk out there. How many OEMs did you see, right? And that's just the ones that are on the floor here today. Are we supposed, are all of your electricians going to get certified in all of those?
No, I would say if you're a charging provider or if you're looking to purchase chargers, look under the skirt, can I say that, of the OEM and figure out what type of training program that they have for their installation network, and then also how do they support and manage their replacement, like field replacement parts and repairability stuff. If they have a really good track record there, then you'll be in good shape. We literally just go to ABM because they have it all. All right, they're already there, right? A lot of these guys, they may have components of it and may be strong in areas and weak in others, and it's up to you to do your own due diligence and actually figure out that. But of course, that's what we're there for, to help and assist on that end. But ABB has such a great product, we just continue to lean on to them as much as we can.
Wow, John.
You don't want stranded assets. It's not ABB Mobility's been around since 2012. We deployed the first 50 kW DC fast charger. We had the first live megawatt charger. We were a part of the team that created silicon carbide power electronics in our R&D facilities over in Europe. You're talking about your partnerships. It goes beyond just picking a charger as a commodity and deploying whatever's out there. If you want to make an investment, and that investment is supposed to have 5 or 10 years supposed to have returns, investor grade returns on it, you need to be partnered up with somebody who's going to be there for the long haul. And I think that's one thing that ABB Mobility has proven.
I want to thank everybody here who came and listened to the panel. I'd like to thank the panel.
Thank you, Mike.
Panel.
Thank you, guys.
And are any of you going to be at the answer bar or probably some booths as well?
Yes, we
for
will
the
be
next-
around.
We're at booth 453. We have a ton of people, and I'll be around, so folks are welcome.
1115 in the back room.
Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Appreciate y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Can I get a photo of all you guys?
Picture all together?
Yeah. We'll see if my shortness helps here.
Nina, you're not short.
Well, 5'3".